Hi, my name is Alexander Nietzsche. I am a current grad student at the University of Denver. I am in the Master's Marketing program, and I attended the session Taboo by Design, Provocation in Brand Experience. This talk was given by Andrew McKinnon and James McKinnon. They are the brothers who are the founders slash owners of the Taboo Group. So the main topic and kind of idea of the session today was really all about provocation. Really maybe talking about or dabbling in things that are a little more taboo or get a reaction out of people because that's what we remember, our emotional reactions to things. As the speakers talked, they talked about how things generally fall into three categories: what we call the highest of highs, and then also the lowest of lows. These are the things we remember when we think about life. We think about the times we're happiest or at our saddest and are just worst. Very rarely do we ever remember that middle zone, what he calls the vanilliness. And so his whole objective is when you're doing marketing, when you want your brand to stand out and to really give an experience, you want to make sure it's not in this middle area. Because as long as you're trying to break out and do something new, even provocative, it's going to end up in one of the two. Hopefully it's a high, but there's a chance that it could not be received right. And so that would probably put it in a low. But even then, that at least still had some sort of emotional reaction to go for something. The speakers actually talked a lot about if you get to the point where there's no real reaction, where you're in that vanilla, you probably weren't trying hard enough to provoke what you wanted. And so they talked about these different things that have to make your brand stand out, to give it a unique experience and make it be memorable. They wanted to demonstrate that themselves in the lecture. So as they talked, they said, for every person that leaves the lecture hall as we talk, we will remove one article of clothing, depending on who is speaking between the two brothers. And so they stayed true to it. No matter where they were at any point in their talk, they would see them go. It started with a hat, then some socks and shoes, and then shorts. And then by the end of the lecture, both of them were down to their tank top and shorts. But it was clearly very effective because it was able to get all of us engaged. And no matter what, we were always looking to see someone get up, but it also were watching them because they were able to keep us engaged with what they were saying. But we also knew there was something that could break the levity, so it could take our mind off of it. There was a suspension of disbelief of what was going on. And so it's really added to that brand experience, and it's probably why it's the one that I enjoyed the most and was the most memorable, because they made a point that stood out to me and actually got an emotional response. I laughed. I thought it was funny. It resonated well with me. And that's really spoke to me in what I want to have to do for brand experience, because I've been doing a lot of research for my magazine concerning brand experience. And as you read through, they're always talking about, make it memorable, unique. But there's very few examples of something, because they'll say different ads. But a lot of different ads come and go. They might stand out in certain time in certain discussions. But a lot of the examples they said suddenly gave when they were talking about the Mona Museum in Tasmania, where it was this billionaire who funded this museum that was a lot more cruder and wasn't afraid to kind of push boundaries, talk about sex and stuff like that, and have art that was a lot more promiscuous in the whole process. And so because of that, it was a success because it got a lot of emotional reaction, mostly good, some bad, but it became an overnight hit, a huge tourist attraction. And because of that, they were able to kind of really show and demonstrate an example of this stood out, this was unique, and now it's one of the biggest things. Another example they gave was Liquid Death. No one had never heard of it before till recently, and then all of a sudden I've seen it everywhere I go. Liquid Death is just water in a can, but they tried to give it a whole new image, a new association with death and decapitation, and yeah. And so because of that, it caused this thing. It's just water. But because of the branding and how it images and how it presents, there causes an emotional reaction, which makes people willing to buy it, willing to engage. Or maybe in a bad way, because there are some critics of it. But still, these two examples really spoke to me in brand experience of not just because, it's pandering to what your customers want, but it's actually giving them something unique to work with and something to feel, to associate with your brand, which only elevates it that much more. Now, however, as they went, they wanted to emphasize as well that there is a need to evaluate which taboos you're willing to push, because they talked about it in terms of societal norms of things that 100 years ago would have gotten you locked up in jail or be a public outcast are now perfectly acceptable part of society. There's also some things that are still hugely taboo, huge no-nos. And so, because of that, they said whatever you're looking to provoke, make sure it's something that's worth provoking, that actually fits within your brand, your message, your beliefs, and is something that should be provoked. And so it's very dangerous you have to be very careful to walk that line, because it's dangerous if you go too far one way or the other. And at that point, you just have a whole PR disaster for your entire brand. Now, when it came to actually recommending doing a brand experience, they always said a lived experience is better. So whatever it is for your company, any kind of activation event, maybe something that actually involves people coming together, interacting, being a part of it. That's what really allows them to have that experience. They said if you can, try to invoke all five senses somehow: smell, sight, hearing, anything you can to really have it resonate on a lot deeper level. And finally, the last thing that they said that really kind of stuck out and resonated to me is when you're giving this experience, you have to let your customers or your consumers own it. You can have an idea in mind of what you want to put out, what you're hoping they might feel, or just that they will feel something. But if at some point they take whatever you're doing and maybe it turns into its own thing, you also have to let it do that. It's part of the experience, whether you intended it or not. So you have to be careful on how you align these things depending on what it could turn into. But usually it's for the best, because it brings a lot of natural community engagement and just unity on certain things, at least from how they described it in the lecture. Overall, I found this lecture to be extremely effective. I feel like I have a lot better idea of what makes the brand experience more unique, stand out, and I'm hoping I can bring that knowledge back and apply it to some different classes upcoming or in my work or internship. So it'll be exciting to see how I'm able to bring this together. But it was a great lecture. I'm glad I attended, and I can't wait for tomorrow.